Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the LATAM Stocks Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Flood. Today, I'm speaking with Pedro Alvarenga. Pedro's the CFO and head of investor relations at CSU Digital. CSU Digital is a publicly traded Brazilian infratech company that offers technology to financial services industry in Brazil. So their market cap's around 800 million reais, which is roughly 160 million US dollars. They have nearly 5,000 employees and over 36 million registered card accounts. So they have a huge book of business. We're going to talk in depth about CSU and its business, but we're also going to discuss the Brazilian's payment industry in general, lay out some of the landscape, and also talk about how AI is impacting financial service in Brazil because it's becoming an increasingly important topic, and Pedro's a great guy to talk to for it. So we've got a lot to cover. Let's get right into it. Hey, Pedro, how are you?
Fine, Patrick. And you?
Thanks so much for doing this. I'm really excited to talk to you and hear more about the payments industry in CSU. But before we do that, tell me a little bit more about yourself. Where you from? What was your career and life path that led you to become the CFO at CSU Digital?
Good. So, as you mentioned, I'm the CFO and AI officer of the company. I'm from Rio de Janeiro, but nowadays I'm living in São Paulo. I'm an economist and I work in financial departments for all my life. I graduated, so I have MBA in economy, finance. I've been working all this period in large companies in Brazil, all listed from different segments. So I have been working in education, telecom, contact center industry, real estate companies. In the last 6, 7 years, I have been working for technology companies. So I have a career for more than 17 years in the financial industry. And that's why I joined CSU 2 years ago to help a lot with the agenda to get closer to the markets, explain a little bit more about the history of the company, but also everything that we created and planned to do on the following years. And that's it. The idea is to bring the company back to the spotlight. We're a listed company here in Brazil, and we're doing a lot in the technology side, bringing a lot of innovation in an industry that's expanding a lot, not only in Brazil, but also in other countries. So that's a little bit about my track record.
Yeah, so let's go in depth into CSU a little later, but can you maybe just give listeners a brief introduction to your business? And then let's talk about the industry in general, because it's the payments industry. So then can we talk about, what's the competitive landscape in the industry you operate in? Who are the major players, your competitors? And then maybe talk about some of that history that you mentioned, because CSU's been around for 31
Good.
years, 1992. Yeah, so a long
Yeah,
time.
long time, long journey.
Yeah.
But for sure, CSU is a company that works as an infotech company for the financial industry, especially in Brazil, but we're now starting to the internationalization of the company. We are always behind the scenes providing all the infrastructure, all the technology for other companies that want to enter to join this market and offer financial service to the end customers. I think that our industry, I'd say that is changing a lot on the following years. The last 5, 6, 7 years, the market in Brazil has passed through a huge expansion, and that's totally related to a large transformation that happened in multiple sides when I think about the financial industry in Brazil. So regulation changed. So nowadays, the Brazilian Central Bank create different types of institutions, of financial institutions in Brazil. So it can be actually a financial institutions that normally it's a bank. You can be a credit institution, or you can be a payment institution in Brazil. We have different types of companies that can work in this industry. And this simple change changes a lot would happen in the following years in Brazil. So what we have seen was an explosion of new users in our industry. Brazil used to be a very analogical industry in terms of financial services. When you think about the use of the solutions, people used to pay a lot using money, using physical channels to pay their bills, for example. And most parts of the population didn't have any kind of access to the financial services, to the financial industry. So with this small change, it created a totally different environment, bringing new companies to join this journey of transformation of digital payments in Brazil. So we have seen a huge explosion of new banks that joined in the industry in the last 5 years. So a good example is Nubank, that now is a big bank in Brazil, C6. We have also seen great number of new companies, new fintechs, niche fintechs, sometimes specialized in credit, mortgage, so different types of products that also entered in this market. And the consequence is that companies like CSU has been benefited by this movement because all those companies need technology, they need know-how about the industry. It's very complex to operate in Brazil. There's a big barrier to operate here because it's complex. The regulation is complex, tax is complex, and all the regulation, not only from the central banks, but also from the card networks. So you have a lot of challenge to operate in Brazil, and these companies need support. They need technology. They need all this background to operate well financial services. So we have seen the number of companies operating in this market coming from 500 to almost 1.5 thousand companies. We have seen the number of users in the industry coming from 6.5 million to almost 190 million people using the financial services in Brazil. The transactions that happens in a digital channel came from 35 to almost 80%, and we're talking a period of 4 or 5 years. So it was very quick. I think that pandemic also helped, but if central bank didn't have changed the regulation, if these companies hasn't invested before the pandemics, it would be impossible to make a quick answer as happened in Brazil. So
Yeah, I think it's
we
so
have
interesting. I think
a
it's so
very
interesting.
digital industry.
Sorry, yeah, I think it's so interesting you went right to the regulatory change because I had it on here to ask you about it. And I don't think most people appreciate how big of a deal it was for financial service in Brazil when they opened it up, right? Because before the changes 5 years ago, your clients would have been 100 major banks, right? It would have been maybe Itaú or Bradesco, but there weren't really startups in fintech and it wasn't a booming industry. And now you have not only more clients, but different types of clients, right? So it increases your client portfolio. And does it also increase your product offering? Like if you had to develop new and specific products?
Yeah, totally. In terms of clients, the number of possibilities, the range of industries that we can cover is much bigger. Imagine like this, in Brazil, it's very common that insurance companies, retail companies, real estate companies, they already used to offer for a long, long time financial services to their own customers as a side business. And they used to make a lot of money with this, but they used to do it on an analogical way. With this, they can access different kind of services and they can scale up what they were doing before. So we had an explosion of new companies trying to make more money with financial services. Some of them, they used to run the business in the past, but in a logical way. And other companies, they didn't have this kind of solutions in their portfolio. Now they want to provide this kind of solutions. And why do they want to provide? Because there are a bigger range of digital payments solutions. You have a different range of digital accounts that you can offer. You can integrate payments and digital accounts with a marketplace. You can integrate this with a benefits program. So you can actually provide the whole package to your customers, what was not so easy to do a few years ago. So the number of companies offering as financial services increased, the range of industries that once or are already offering also increased, and the possibilities of digital transactions increased a lot. For example, Pix, that's the instant payment in Brazil, very correlated to the FedNow that's being developed in the US. Pix is a revolution in our industry because nowadays is 40% of the transactions in Brazil. It was be zero 3 years ago. So this explains a lot why our industry is growing so fast because we have new products, we have new solutions. In our point of view, we are just scratching the surface. Although I would say that Brazil is already a front runner in comparison to a lot of countries when you think about the financial sector, we're just scratching the surface because we're already discussing other solutions. Pix credit, we're discussing a lot about open finance, the regulated cryptocurrency in Brazil that we call DREX. So there's a lot of new agendas being stimulated by the central bank, but also being all the time bringing new investments from companies to speed up this and bring more volumes of transactions in Brazil. So the market changes a lot, and we believe that will keep happening changes all over the time, which means that this market will keep growing for a long, long period.
So let me ask you then a little bit about the card industry as it relates to Pix, because I know the card processing industry is still a big industry in Brazil, right? I mean, Itaú, I see their ads all the time. They send me for their orange payment processor now. Stone is a really popular company with international investors. But how do traditional cards fit into a Pix world, right? Pix is instant and free. So are people still going to be using debit and credit cards in Brazil in 5 years?
We believe so. Imagine like this, the discussion about credit cards is not a discussion about a card, it's a discussion about credit, right? Because at the end of the day, the main use of cards has always been credit in Brazil. People need to pay in installments sometimes, and it's totally related to the income of the individuals in Brazil. And the credit card is a very good solution in the sense because the discussion about interest rates in Brazil, the issue of the interest rates in Brazil is big. We have high interest rates, we have inflation, and when you use the credit cards, it's very similar to the buy now, pay later structure that you have in the US. You don't have interest rates applied in this payment. So that's why it's so important as a driver of credit in Brazil. Okay. So the discussion would be, what's going to happen with credit in Brazil in 5 years? Not about cards. Cards is just a tool. It's just an arrangement to conclude the transaction. No, and what we have seen in the last 4 or 5 years is that Pix actually helped the credit card to grow in a faster way. Because imagine like this, Pix, the use of Pix is still 100 concentrated in upfront payments, okay? And Pix has been the opening door product for the major number of clients in the sense of accessing the financial systems. People didn't have any kind of access. Remember, we're talking about 65 million 4 years ago. And the first product that they have access was Pix. So that was the opening door for this big growth in the payments industry in Brazil, in the financial industry in Brazil, all over the time. And after that, the financial institutions started to know these newcomers, these new clients. I start to understand you better. I know when you receive money. I understand when you pay, when you make a lot of cash out because you have a lot of payments, a lot of bills to pay. And as I start to understand your behavior, I'm allowed to provide credit solutions, for example, credit cards. So although Pix has increased a lot his relevance in the industry, so nowadays it's 40%, credit cards also grew. So credit cards and debit cards and prepaid cards represents 40% of the transactions too. What happens is that money disappeared in Brazil. We don't use cash anymore. We only use digital payments to do this. But when you think about digital transactions, everything became Pix or became something related to a credit card. So I don't see credit cards disappearing, but it will change the way that you use a credit card. We know that in the past, credit card used to be a plastic, and then you have a wallet with a card, you have a virtual card, you have a digital card, and that what's going to be next? We know that the companies are already invest, for example, the use of AI in cards to expand the way that the volumes of transactions. So this industry will keep growing in our point of view. Probably will be different. Credit cards arrangements are going to be different in the following years than they are now. And Pix is going to be like a second option for payments. That's our point of view.
So yeah, I think people would be shocked by what credit card interest rates are in Brazil. Do you know what they are currently, like roughly? I mean,
when you think about the acquiring or the
for the
MDR,
user, like what's the average interest rate a Brazilian pays on a credit card?
it can reach 400%.
Yeah. Okay. That's
If you don't
crazy.
pay, and if you don't pay your bill, right? If you pay on daily basis, the interest rate implied is what the retail is charging on you. But if you don't pay your bill, it's 400%. So it's crazy.
Yeah. So I
It's
think the other
huge.
thing too is, and then like CSU, one of the product lines you guys have is loyalty programs, right? And a
Sure.
lot of the Brazilian credit cards don't offer like cash back or like the points. Like it's such a big business in the US. I mean, all my
Yeah.
friends would talk about what credit card should I get because this one gives me Uber credits and this one gives me 3x points at restaurants. Is that going to grow too as credit
Yeah.
expands in
Totally.
Brazil, do you think?
Totally. Totally. Because one of the discussions that is present in our industry is about the engagement of the users. It's beautiful to see how the industry grew and we have new companies working in this industry. But the new challenge is the client now has 3, 4 bank accounts. The same client has 2, 3 credit cards. So how can I, as a company, make this person start using more my solutions in comparison to the competitors? So this is going to be a big challenge for the following years. It's very common if you take a look at the numbers of banks, the now banks, that they say, oh, I have 50 million clients, 10 million are actually using.
Mm-hmm.
Man, this is a big gap, And that's why loyalty programs are getting so important in this industry. It has been very important for credit cards a few years ago, but when you think about all the new solutions, it's the same because the reason that you will reach the solution, but bigger, because if you have a digital account, you have more complexity, you need more investments. So you need to actually make the individual make more transactions so you can monetize the investments that you have done before. So this is an industry that's going to grow fast in Brazil. It's already growing a lot in our business and as a segment as a whole. Because of this, how can you reach the principality of this end user? So this is something that's already been discussed a lot, and it's going to be one of the next great waves of growth for the industry.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Brazilians are such big users of airline miles. I remember that there's an airline mile association that publishes the statistics, and I think it's like 160 or 180 million registered airline mile accounts in Brazil, which is a lot. So it makes sense that Brazilians would adopt that like crazy for credit card points too. But I want to go back to Pix real quick because I have a hard time understanding like who does Pix disintermediate, right? Because it's direct payments, instant, and it's free. So there's middlemen on the payment processes that take 2 to 3% on card transactions, right? So like whose business suffers because Pix is now 40% of payments in Brazil?
It's imagine like this: Pix is free for the end user, but
Hmm.
for the companies that offer Pix, it's not free. Okay, they need to pay. And there's a second challenge when I think about the Pix.
When you say the companies that offer it, you mean the banks, right? So
The bank
it's not the guy selling água de coco at the padaria, and it's not me, the end user. It's the banks that have the cost.
that have the cost. That's
Okay.
it. So And there's other costs implied that sometimes people don't see when you think about the financial transaction. For example, chargebacks, how it works when you think about PIX. It's totally dependent the issuer of the bank. When we are talking about credit cards, the card networks, they have a big role to understand if and judge where were the fraud was on the retail, was at the bank systems. They make this kind of audit,
And they also have time between settlement, right? They have a few days or a month until final settlement, where PIX it's instant. It's in the other person's bank account, and good luck getting it back.
Good luck getting back. That's going to be the challenge about PIX. So we don't have nowadays an infrastructure in terms of compliance, of judging and analyzing and auditing what happened in the arrangement, and the costs will be 100% to the bank. That's what happens when you think about PIX. If you have a fraud when your client is using PIX, good luck on you. The charge is going to be 100% on the banks. So that's why it's not so cheaper as people think for companies.
Is it a loss leader for the banks then? Do the banks lose money on PIX, you think, or no?
No, nowadays they don't lose money, but they expand more than when with most part of the people believe. That's zero.
Not free.
It's not zero.
Okay.
It's zero for the population. For them, it's not zero. It's far from this, So I would say normally the challenge, but I think that the companies are working pretty well. The biggest challenge is going to be to the acquiring company, because the acquiring companies, normally they are totally dependent of what's happening about cards. For companies like CSU and other companies that compete with us, we are an infrastructure company for financial services. So for me, I have revenues for everywhere. If you use PIX, if you use credit cards, it doesn't matter, But for the acquiring companies, the brands, the card networks, they will have some challenge about PIX if PIX starts to cannibalize or credit cards. We haven't seen this happening, and I don't think that's going to happen for a long time, because again, we're discussing about credit, okay? And the risks changes when you think about who is providing the credit, if you're using PIX or if you're using a credit card. So for the retail, for example, it changed the way that you take risks. For the banks, it changed a lot the risk when you think about PIX. So there's no balance at all. So that's why we believe the market will adapt for each situation. What's the better payment method to be used? So even the company or the clients, they will check what's best for them. If it's easier to use cards, you're going to use cards. If it's cheaper to pay using PIX, you're going to use PIX. If you have more benefits using your cards than using your PIX, you're going to use cards. So there is no right answer. I think the mix will change all over the time, but both payment methods are going to keep moving forward for the following years. Cash, it will disappear. So that's what we believe.
Okay, interesting. That makes sense. So you gave me a good bridge when you mentioned AI a little bit and the fraud prevention with PIX. So tell me a little bit more about AI in Brazil, how it's being used in the financial services, and what are you guys working on at CSU? Because I know you've implemented it pretty heavily internally. Internally, and then we can talk more about the products you plan on rolling out. But just tell me in general about AI in financial services in Brazil.
Yeah, I think AI, in our point of view, is going to be really, really relevant for the financial industry in Brazil. This is our main bet for 2024 and 2025 and so on and so forth. Imagine like this. When you think about the revolution that I mentioned in the beginning of this call in the financial industry in Brazil, the main challenge, the first challenge was the interface, the way that the companies get in touch with the clients used to be very analogical. It used to be very difficult to access financial services. The experience of use of an app, for example, was pretty bad a few years ago. So it's like your showroom was a mess, you know, if you make a comparison to the retail. And I think the first move that happened in Brazil was, let us change this environment. So especially the newcomers, the new entrants in this industry, they started providing a much better solutions in terms of user experience. So the apps, the super apps, as we call here, became a reality. You access the app of the bank, you're going to pay all the bills, you're going to sign in a credit contract, you're going to access Pix, you're going to access everything about financial services. But you start to offer different things there because you need to monetize the user. You need to make him engage with you. So, for example, banks start to offer marketplace for purchase. They start to offer concierge services, financial consulting. That was the first step. How can I improve the experience in your showroom when you think about a financial institution? And we have done a pretty good job on it, I could say. But when you think about the next wave, and AI is really important in two different angles. When you think about the experience, it's still about the experience. Financial services are still passive. You don't have an interface that access the client directly, that get in touch with the client to start to offer something
Mhm.
different for them. He needs to log in on the app and let me check what's available on the marketplace. This is a good offer. Let me make a purchase. You're going to sell more, yeah, but not as much as you could if you
Mhm.
start using AI to increase the level of transactions in terms of financial services. You can increase the transactions approving more because you start using AI to better analyze the end customer. So this is one of the use when you think about the showroom. But you can also start to offer different things for the same guy after you see specific transaction that has been done in the credit cards or in the digital accounts. Just to give you an example, one individual he bought travel ticket in a specific store. It doesn't matter where, you know. You know that this guy is going to travel, right? So why can this bank start to make an offer, real time offering for this guy of a luggage, for example? So we're talking about using a payment method to leverage sales. This is one kind of thing that you can do. Other thing that you can do, the challenge is to engage the client, to make him loyal to your brand, right? That one of the challenge. And you have a pretty good client that you don't want to lose. So when he buys the ticket, why can I offer him? Well, redeem points instead of using money to pay this travel ticket. So leveraging loyalty programs, as you mentioned. Other thing that you can use, this guy is going to travel and he has a credit card. He bought the ticket through his credit card and he has a concierge benefit. He doesn't pay to use a person, for example, to tell him where the best address for you to make a reservation in the hotel. Why can I make an opt-in to this guy and try to offer a hotel, a concierge services for this guy? For plenty of sides, of angles, you can start offering more things to the same person through the financial services. That's the
Mhm.
challenge. How can you move a little bit more in this kind of relationship that you already have with this customer? So you have this relationship, but how can you make more money in this with the same guy? That's the challenge. So
Mhm.
that's why we are already applying AI in our financial services solutions. we're testing this in this case, and the approval ratio increased 100 basis points since we start to use this kind of tool. So, and we are still training the machine. So that's huge. It's a lot that can be increased in the middle term. The second angle that AI is being applied for financial services is more directed to costs. So every time that you make a financial transaction, 1 second later is going to happen the magic in terms of back office and middle office operations. It's like this. You are going to sign in a contract of credit. So nowadays, you're going to log in your app. You're going to say what kind of credit that you want. You are going to check the best interest rates. You are going to fill some documents. You're going to take a picture, a self picture. You're going to take a picture of your documents. You're going to attach some documents that the bank wants and click sign in. Totally digital, right? You don't need to go to the bank agency to make this. Totally digital. And then you click the button. What comes next is that from the door, so from the showroom to the inside of the companies, you have a lot of paperwork, different systems to access and analyze data. You have a lot of data curation that is normally done on manually basis. You have a lot of people making a lot of manual job to check if there was fraud, to check these documents. So you have a lot of inefficiency when you think about what's behind the scenes in the companies, in the financial institutions. And that's common, that's regular. That's what happens every time that starts a new operation, you start doing on your own hands. And at some point, you get so big and you keep doing with your own hands. And this costs a lot for the companies. So here we brought a concept of hyper automation using AI applied to back office and middle office operations. What does it mean? It means that all these different systems, all these different ways to capture a data from a client that can be on a physical document, that can be on a PDF, on Excel, for us, doesn't matter. Because of this hyperautomation platform that we call HAS, the name of the platform here in CSU, AI applied in the input of this kind of data, we move from analyzing spreadsheets to analyzing tables of contents, and we start to analyze data. So for us, doesn't matter the way that you capture the information. AI can understand where the information that you need is present in that document, in that table. So AI is very important because they can understand different information and capture this information and put in this data on the workflows of the back office and mid office operations. So this is one kind of use of AI when you think about this kind of situations. The second use is if you only apply automation in a back office or mid office operation, you are going to repeat what is being done by a human. Doesn't matter if this person is doing in an efficient way or not. It's like this. If he access 10 different systems, if this person type all this kind of information, capturing this data from the column D from a spreadsheet, the machine is going to repeat step by step what this person used to do. Okay, this is the concept of automation. When you use the hyper automation, and again, here using machine learning and AI, what you do is you first make the automation, as I just mentioned, and then you put a machine to fight against the first machine, to watch what this machine is doing. And this machine, the second machine, is going to try to understand where are the gaps of this workflow, why you are taking so much time to make an interaction, to conclude a transaction from the click that you have done on the app until the money gets available and on your bank account. So the machines try to understand where is the problem. So this is a way to improve the process, because in the past you used to use a product manager person that would check
Mhm.
with the guy that's operating the machine and make interviews and then draw the process. It's the same. The machines do the same. They try to understand what are the gaps and try to create new options of workflows, observing where are the problems or the gaps or the issues of this prior workflow. And then the platform changes this workflow automatically. So you don't need to go there and program again. The machine
Mhm.
programs itself. So AI again present in the industry. And the impact is huge. We applied this concept on us to improve our operations, and our results grew really, really fast in the last 4 years. So our gross profit doubled, our EBITDA doubled, net income tripled just because of this kind of solutions.
Yeah.
So in our point of view, these two angles, approving more, making more sales, and also reducing costs and friction of the final customer to conclude the transactions, are going to be the next steps of the industry in Brazil.
Yeah, yeah. You when we talked previously, you explained the product to me, and then I asked you, is that what accounts for your margin improvements over the past few years? Because if you look at CSU's financials, you see gross and net margins for the past several years improving, and it's the AI products are showing up directly on your bottom line.
Yeah, we use CSU as a lab. So we applied hyperautomation in our own process. So we, in the 4 or 5 years ago, we used to run a lot of paperwork, a lot of systems that an operator would access to analyze a fraud, to analyze a document. That was our reality 5, 6 years ago. So when we start to apply this kind of solutions for us, our margin grew a lot. The costs, the direct costs, and the SG&A of the company in terms of percentage of the revenues reduced massively because of the hyperautomation. So
So
now
interesting.
we are start to offering this as a product to our customers too.
Yeah. So I'll ask you one more technical question about AI, I guess. So, because you have 500 developers, I think you said roughly
Yeah,
the last
yeah.
time we spoke. So you guys write a lot of code. So I think maybe you're a good person to ask. But I spoke with a Brazilian venture capitalist recently, Lucas Abreu, and he commented on AI in Brazil, and he said that Brazil is going to see products built on the application layer, but he doesn't think that Brazilian companies are going to be players at the infrastructure layer in AI. So he compared it to like the cloud computing market. And I'm just
Yeah.
curious, is that what you're seeing as well in the AI products you're building, or is CSU building out its own infrastructure for AI as well?
No, we're using the same concept what he mentioned. It's
Okay.
like this. This is a game of data, big number of data, the volumes of data. So it's very difficult thinking about compete with Google, IBM, and so on and so forth. Actually, these guys are the best in this arena, So in CSU, what we're doing is we are applying their technology in our platforms and developing other kind of solutions using their technology as a spine. Imagine like this: when you think about generative AI, I won't be able to develop a pretty good generative AI as they can. It's impossible. I don't want to compete on it. I want to use their technology. So they're a pretty relevant partner from CSU. What I'm doing is I'm using the generative AI that they offer and combining with all the data for financial services that I have that they don't have to make a much stronger algorithm, you know?
Right.
So that's the concept of the use of AI that we're applying in our operation. But in my point of view, I'm not talking only about CSU. I think Brazil, we use a lot of AI because we have a lot of bureaucracy. We have difficult and problems when you think about services. It's not so good the way that you need to when you need to interact with the companies. You have a lot of paperwork still present in Brazil. So I think we're going to be a big adopter of this kind of technology. But in terms of developing and trying to challenge those guys, I don't see that happening in the short time. It can
Yeah.
change, but nowadays, I think we're going to be a big user of this industry.
So let me ask you a more CFO, a financial question then about the AI. And let's talk a little bit about then the research and development. I'm curious. So like how much do you guys invest in your research and development? Like, is it expensive to build an AI product in Brazil? Is it reasonable? What are the biggest expenses? Is it hardware? Is it access to the Google or IBM services? Is it just developers? Tell me a little bit about what the research and development process was like.
Yeah, I think I would say that the biggest cost that we have in this arena is about development.
Mhm.
So it's impossible to create a platform that we create in terms of hyper automation and use of AI, just picking one available solution from the market. You don't have it. You need to capture a solution from IBM, Google, and then start to developing your own platform. So that's the way that we work. So the biggest expense that we have is on capex about this. We have hours and hours of work being done to create our own platform together with the
Mhm.
solutions that those companies offer. So nowadays, CSU is investing around 12% of its revenues, 98% in tangible assets. So we're talking about development. So
Okay.
it's very important in our business, not only about AI, but also, for example, about anti-fraud systems. Brazil has challenges in this arena. There's a lot of fraud that happens here. So we also probably are going to Brazil is going to be the best in anti-fraud systems. So we need to invest a lot on it. We need to invest in hardware too. But nowadays we use a lot of cloud-based platforms, so it reduces the capex, but increase OPEX. So that's the way that we operate. We're investing a lot. We're talking about 12% of the revenues.
Interesting. So yeah, I think we covered a lot of AI. So maybe let's do the CSU more specific
Sure.
stuff, right? So you have a core business. The AI is something you've developed and you're going to be rolling it out to clients, or you've just begun rolling it out to clients, correct?
Yeah, this is a pretty good question. I talked so much about AI. Some people can say, "Oh, you're an AI company." I heard that in the last meeting that I had done.
Well, it's a good thing to brand yourself as these days. If you haven't seen some of the
Yeah,
AI stocks like Nvidia.
yeah, that's true. But explain a little bit more about what we do, what we do. CSU is a company that develops and offers technology for financial services. That's our core business. So we born it as the first card processor, the independent card processor in Brazil. So what provides is technological infrastructure in the order that other companies can offer financial services to their own customers. So that's the way that we work. People won't see our brand on a POS, on the merchant. People won't see our brand on a digital account. But every time that a financial institution, a retail company, an insurance company wants to offer financial services, they need this kind of infrastructure. So we operate on a white label way, and they use our technology to provide these services. So that's the way CSU works. So that's the key driver of the company in terms of growth, which will be, I don't know, probably for our whole life, very long journey, but I'd say for a long, long time. So that's the way that we position our company. We're the largest digital payments processor here in Brazil, competing with big companies from Brazil and from outside. So we have, for example, TCS, FIS as competitors in Brazil. They are listed companies in the US. We have Doki, Pismo, Brazilian companies that compete in some of these arenas with us. So it's a big market in Brazil. CSU is the leader since the beginning of this journey with more than 32 years of experience. We have big clients, more than 40 big companies as clients of the company. We have more than 36 million registered cards and accounts on other platforms. We processed 1 billion transactions in the last 12 months, more than 300 billion reais in terms of financial volumes that we processed. But CSU has a second characteristics that's very important to share with everyone that's listening to this video today. That CSU didn't stop on the financial services infrastructure. CSU always had a concern about helping the client, the B2B client, to work well with this kind of services, to make money, to monetize this kind of products. And every time that you launch a financial services, you have big challenges in terms of front office operations. So we're talking about tendency of the end users. You have challenges in terms of back office, middle office, and so on and so forth. So we integrated also different platforms like loyalty programs, customer experience, hyper automation solutions, in the sense of bringing efficiency to these companies so they can make more money as they could do using a platform from the competitors. So this is something that I would say that differentiates CSU from the market. We are the only full service company here in Brazil in terms of offering all the solutions for any company that wants at most becomes a digital bank. If they want to become a digital bank, you have the whole package through our systems. Okay, so that's what CSU does, and we are a company that's very mature. All this portfolio has been created all over the years. CSU is a company that's really concentrated on moving step by step. We are not a traditional tech company that burns cash and doesn't matter if we're going to make money at some point. CSU invests organically for a long time, generating a lot of results through these main ecosystems that we created.
Yeah. So let's talk about your financials and the company's philosophy. But first, are there any of the major clients maybe that you can highlight that are already publicly known? I know it's white label, but I think a lot of listeners would be surprised. They've probably interacted with one of your products if they've ever been to Brazil and used a Brazilian platform. So is there any client you can highlight that it's already publicly known?
Sure. Our main clients, I would say that's Porto Seguro. It's a big insurance company in Brazil. Sicredi, it's a financial institution in Brazil. Banrisul is a big bank, a regional bank here in Brazil. iFood, that's a digital retail platform here in Brazil, the biggest one in Brazil. We have Heineken as a client. So we have big companies in our portfolio.
Yeah, iFood might be the biggest in the world, actually. I don't know. They're insanely big relative to their competitors, or not competitors because companies aren't there, but compared to DoorDash and the American European companies, they're enormous.
And growing fast.
And growing fast, but the technical challenge, it's impressive because their app works, the food shows up, and I mean they have like 300,000 delivery drivers, right? It's a huge company.
They're huge. I would say that they are not a retail company, a digital retail company. They are a tech company. That's the truth. They create something that's really impressive in terms of how the number of people participating on the logistic, and they need to manage all this, and how you can access so many establishments, commercial establishments in Brazil. You don't see nothing similar.
And it worked. It's works impressive. Well. It works every time for years. Yeah. So let's talk then about the financials. So like you mentioned, I think if investors looked at your balance sheet and your income statement, they wouldn't guess it was a tech company, right? It
Yeah.
has net income, it has very low debt, so it's conservatively run. It pays a dividend, right? You guys dividend to shareholders regularly. So can you just talk about CSU's philosophy around financials? You mentioned the R&D budget at 12%, but how does CSU think about its financial position and shareholders?
Yeah. The company, I would say that we operate for a long time in this market. So we know very well that sometimes you see a lot of new products, a new technology, and you can commit a lot of mistakes if you don't take one step back and what are the real trends that are going to be the winners in our industry. So in the sense, we take time studying a lot, study a lot what's happening in the market. We have great relationships in the central bank, in other technology companies like IBM, Google, and other companies from our industry. We use a partnership business model, so we will never hear from us saying our technology is 100% developed in-house. We know there are a lot of people making big investments in some arenas that they're going to be better than us, and we need to use those guys in our benefit. So I don't believe in the model that we hear from most parts of fintech that, oh, I need to be 100%. The technology need to be proprietary 100%. That's why they burn cash and we don't burn cash. So that's our point of view. Okay. So we are a company that is generating a lot of results, and we don't have gaps between results and cash. Our EBITDA conversion in cash is 84%. So we are, in the sense, a company that's very focused on results, cash generation, and during all this journey, invest a lot in new technology, but always watching what's going to be the winner's guess that of the market. So we invest a lot. We invest like 12% of our results. We almost don't have financial debt. The leverage level is zero. Actually, we're a net cash company. We are accumulating a lot of cash despite of investing more in the previous years, despite of paying out a lot of dividends to the shareholders. So our payout is 50%. So we generate a lot of cash, which make us have a solid balance net cash company, which makes us very comfortable to keep investing in all these arenas that are expanding in Brazil. We see great arenas of expansions. So this is very important to mention to the listeners here that the company defined 4 main avenues of growth for the following years: digital payments, that's our core business; embedded finance, so providing core banking and financial solutions added on it for companies that want to become a digital bank or companies that want to offer parts of this kind of service to their customers. Loyalty is also very important for us. Embedded, not as a standalone offer, but embedded in digital payments, embedded in bank as a services. So these are the main bets of the company when you think about the payments industry. And the hyper automation is a great avenue of growth of the company. Totally new, has been launched on the third quarter of 2023, but with a good promise of growth in the short term, because companies needs a lot here in Brazil, and that's what we're attacking now. But always focus on hyper automation can be an opening door offering with entering the companies through this, improving their operations, reducing costs for these companies, reducing friction of these companies with their customers, and then using all the expertise that I receive when I enter and link our systems to these companies to upsell the financial products. That's the strategy of the company. About the growth that people can check in the results, they are going to see. It's very important to understand that the company not only created new growth avenues, but we transformed our business 4 or 5 years ago. We were pretty analogical 4 or 5 years ago. So cards used to be plastic. When you think about customer experience, we used to run traditional contact centers, but now we have a totally different operation. So we digitalized everything that we do. So was the main challenge, was to exchange the tire with the car running. That's what we were doing. So we're a company that grows a lot in terms of operational level. We're talking about 10 to 20% of growth in any KPI that you can check. Registered units in terms of accounts and cards, processed transactions, the number of interactions, the financial volume that we manage in the platforms. We'll talk about 10, 15, 20, sometimes 30% of growth per year in the last 4 or 5 years. So we're a company that grows a lot when you think about the operational level, but people that are going to check our results also will see that as when you move from analogical products to a digital products, you change the pricing point. So it's very important to check this, and this is a pretty good disclaimer that we give to investors, that the pricing point changes, things get cheaper every time that you go for digital products. Otherwise, you wouldn't do this movement of digitalization. So in terms of revenues, we're growing 6-7% per year because of this pricing move. This move is almost in the end. So, for example, CSU pays 95% of the transactions are already digital, and 71% in the DX side digital, which means that we're going to see the company in terms of operational level and financial level, in terms of revenue, growing at similar paces in the near future. The other side of the digitalization is that for our clients, it gets cheaper, but for us, gets much more efficient to operate digital products, especially if you apply hyper automation in between all this. So what people are going to see is a company that doubled its gross profit, doubled its EBITDA in terms of nominal reference, and tripled its net income in this segment. So the consequence is that our margins in any segment that we operate grew a lot in a short time of period. So we're talking about a company that 5 years ago used to run in a gross margin of 25%. We're now running a company in a 40% gross margin. We used to run a company with 24-25% of EBITDA margin. We are now running close to 35-36%. The net income margin, the same. We used to run with a 6% of net margin. We are now running close to 18%. So the economics of the company changed. As we don't have gaps in between results and cash, we also doubled the cash generation of the company, which makes us really comfortable to keep invest in all that possibilities of growth that I mentioned. One last thing that I would like to mention is that the investment has been done during this cycle of 4 years, and we are now 100% ready, and we launched the solutions. So we believe that's really possible to speed up the growth of the company in the near future. So that's the way that we see our economics.
That's so interesting. So I'm through all my questions, Pedro. Is there anything we didn't cover about the industry or CSU, any of the products that you want to talk about before we finish up?
That we didn't cover? I don't think so. I think that
we covered a lot.
We covered a lot, and the company, I would just summarize that the company is delivering results, already delivering results, which is very, very good for who wants to invest in assets that we're not selling future, we're selling present. And we have a great future that has been drawn in the last few years with pretty good and big growth avenues. We are not anymore a Brazilian company. We're now an international company. So we're starting our operation outside of Brazil, and we are going to start through the USA, a market that's 15 times bigger than Brazil. So we have pretty good opportunities to keep investing and expanding our operations. I think that's the summary of what I mentioned before.
Great. So where can people reach out to you, find you on the internet, learn more about CSU? Where should I send them?
I'd say that the best channel is our website, so csu.com.br, or you can access the IR website. We have a lot of information there about the strategy, the business model, have big number of presentations there. We have all the results. So I think there are a lot of information there too. So RI
I'll find a link in the show notes. Don't worry. Yeah.
.com.br, and you can access the IR department. The numbers of you can call or the email, they're totally available on the website. But that's the easiest way to find us.
Great. And I will put all that in the show notes for anyone listening. So thank you so much for doing this. It was a really interesting discussion. I appreciate it.
Patrick, thanks a lot, and count on us. We'll be
we'll follow up. We'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. We'll be always here to help with any other doubts that you guys have.
Thanks, Pedro.